Welcome to week 3 of our life group study for this semester, and we've got some exciting things that are going to happen. We'll be looking at Acts chapter 8, verses 26 through 40 tonight. But just to get you caught up to this point, we see that as we concluded last week, that things are looking well for the church. There's some persecution, but they're responding with a lot of heart and a lot of boldness and prayer. And we see that people are generous and they had all things in common. But as we start chapter 5, we see that things aren't as well as they initially appear. We're going to start to see some issues that the church has to work through. And the first issue that they come across is this, this story of Ananias and Sapphira, this couple who really attempted to deceive the church to make themselves appear more generous and more mature than they really were. They go to the apostles and they just sold some property and they wanted to give some money to the church. And that's a good thing, but they lied about how much they were giving. And God takes their life. Because what we see in the early church, if this witness really is going to begin to expand and to increase in all the earth, there cannot be any disunity. There cannot be any deception. And so for the church just starting out, this is a serious issue. Peter looks at them and said, you didn't just lie to us. You lied to the Holy Spirit. You lied to God himself. And God takes their life. And people then begin to have this great awe, this fear, this reverence of the apostles. And not just the apostles, but God's presence within them. Many signs and wonders were being done through Peter and John and through all of the apostles. And there's just this awe upon every soul that sees them. Well, of course, this makes the religious leaders jealous and angry. They're gaining a following and they're converting a lot of people to Jesus. And so they go and they arrest the apostles again. And this time they don't just threaten them. They begin to threaten them and then they send them off with a beating. Really threatening them again to say, hey, this is your last warning. If we catch you preaching of Jesus again, this could cost you your life. And so we see that not only is there internal deception within the church, but now the opposition outside the church is increasing. It's getting more serious. And then we see another issue as we come to the start of Acts chapter 6, where these Hellenistic Jews, which are Greek-speaking Jews, their widows aren't getting the daily nutrition, the daily food that they feel like they're promised. And so they go and they complain to the apostles, and they're basically saying, hey, you're showing some prejudice. We're not being cared for the way that we should, and we've got to fix this. And instead of complaining or responding back in a negative way, the apostles say, you know what, you're right. We've got to take care of this. Things are getting out of our control and we need help. And so they find 7 men who are filled with the Holy Spirit to go and begin to take care of these widows. One of these men, named Stephen, says he was a man of great power, great understanding, great faith, and he was filled with the Holy Spirit. And as he was serving and leading in the church, we see that he begins to have a confrontation with the religious leaders of that day. In Acts chapter 7, we see this big, long speech that Stephen makes, and what he does is he starts in the Old Testament, and he just begins to prove all the way through the Old Testament how Jesus is the Christ. He was crucified, and the people that are there now, they're just like their fathers. Just like the fathers in the Old Testament killed the prophets, they themselves have killed Jesus. And this response, it doesn't go over well with the religious leaders. They're upset, they're angry, and so they pick up stones and they begin to stone Stephen to death as the first martyr of the Christian church. We see one of the men who were standing there approving of Stephen's execution is a young man named Saul. Saul will be a major player later, but the persecution is increasing. It's going to begin to ravage the church. And it's at this moment that the church begins to move from Jerusalem and into Samaria. And we begin to see the ministry of Philip as he comes into Samaria, and there's a great revival, and the Holy Spirit falls on the Samaritans. And in the midst of a really successful ministry, God calls Philip away to a deserted road where there seems to be no one there, but God has a work for him to do. And so tonight we're going to look at the one-on-one evangelism tactic of Philip as he meets with this man from Ethiopia. Hope you enjoy, hope you get a lot out of it, and we'll see you next week.